We're using this mineral wool insulation here. It seems to work really well. The idea with it, it doesn't absorb moisture. It really, and that's a concern of mine on this particular project, is, how are we going to handle moisture and off-gassing and all those kind of things on here? This is an inert material. It is made from actually stone. That's why they call it mineral wool. Some natural stones, it could be volcanic ash, it could be other things, and they spun it into here to do it. But I really like it because, again, does not absorb moisture, does not support combustion, and mildew and mold and all that, it doesn't grow on it. So these are all important things that we worry about when we build an eco-friendly home. Are we able to allow moisture to work its way out? In the colder climates, your concern is in the wintertime. Moisture always goes from high to low, so the house would have more moisture on the inside than the outside, and so moisture will make its way through a framing system, an insulation system, and find itself, hopefully it can work its way all the way to the outside without getting trapped in there, and then quite the opposite if you're in the warmer climate, being usually more humid on the outside, working its way in. So again, getting back to this material, there's several different kinds that we could choose. We even went one episode and we went to the Connecticut Center there to talk about all this with Jen Parsons, and she walked us through a bunch of different kinds of insulation, and you know what? This was not really one of those ones on the list. Yeah, it's like with working with any insulation, you have to do your safety concerns on there. The one advantage to this particular insulation, it is not like a fiberglass where a lot of people get very itchy and do all that. This is more nuisance on there. So it may have a slight, abrasion or whatever on that reaction to it, but it's not the way you have that itch. On this project, when we started insulating, we started with the walls downstairs. So first floor, get all the outside insulation on there. We use an R23 for 2x6 construction, 5.5 inches thick. Worked their way all the way up, and again, even the walls and the top. And then when we got to doing the roof rafters, they don't make a material commonly available that would be more than 7 1/4 or R30. So in our case, we have 2 layers of insulation in our rafter bays. Put a layer of this R15, which is 3.5, and then we put another layer of the same stuff we use on the outside walls, that R23. So we really have an R38 insulation built up in there in 2 layers, and I just feel like it's a better way to do it. We staggered the joints just like we did outside. Again, not as much for infiltration. We seem to stop that. Again, this insulation here that we're talking about is your last defense. We started with that whole wall system, how we're doing it, we're working from the outside in, between our cladding on the outside, our rain screen or wind, barrier there, then to the 2 layers of rigid insulation, to our vapor permeable membrane, the plywood, and then now this on the inside. And the last thing that will go over top of this would be our sheetrock, and with some other, latex paint on there that helps with moisture control on the whole system. We had to insulate the outside gable end all the way up to the roof rafters. A lot of times if you're doing conventional insulation, you would put it on the flat and it would be your ceiling joist. But in this particular project, we want to keep the insulation close to the rigid insulation that we have on the outside roof and walls. So again, that determines where we're going to insulate. So if we put the insulation here, then our thermal envelope, the attic, is conditioned space. So it really works out well. The other advantage of insulating the way we did, being the roof rafters here, everything underneath those rafters is now conditioned space. So that's our thermal envelope, if you say. Just follow up the outside walls, go up the roof rafters and all the way back down. So my mechanical system, all my ductwork, everything that is in the attic really is in conditioned space. So depending on local codes and what goes on ours, we definitely insulated our supply duct, but our return duct was kind of optional because it really is in conditioned space. It's pulling from that same air in there. But I think this is a much better way to do it. We have our rigid insulation on the roof right above us. We want to insulate, put our insulation system right up to that, and that way it just creates this great thermal envelope that we have here with any interruption in that insulation. In a traditional home, as we said in many episodes, it's that intersection between the wall and the ceiling is where is always poorly insulated. It gets compressed. We're trying to allow air movement through there, prop event, other things, and it's just not a good thing. Even if I filled these rafters all the way up to here with insulation, which is great, don't get me wrong, but the idea, again, when I work my way out to it meets the, the ceiling versus the wall, it has to compress to allow air movement in most attics. So again, I felt like that was a weak link. The system seems to be working really well for us. Look at it during the hottest days or even when it's cold. The building really is keeping its temperature, and even before we started this, wall cavity insulation. As you can see with the two layers here, this is the R15, which is for a regular 2x4 wall, 3.5 inches thick. And this is the insulation, the R23, that's designed for regular 2x6 framing, 5.5 inches. So we put those two together to fill that 9.25 inch cavity that we have up there. And again, it makes a good system by staggering the joints on there and doing that. Now we fill the whole system, and I just feel like it's a better way to go. In doing this insulation, it really takes a lot of material when you're doing a whole house like this. And especially when we're doing, all the way up to the peak on that roof rafters and systems. So I've made many trips over to the supply house to get more insulation on here. But the other thing, it's big and bulky. There isn't a lot of room to do it. So why bring in all that material and trip over and do this? So kind of do it in loads, come in, do that. Hopefully, this will be one more load and we'll be able to get the sheetrock going on there. So it's been quite a process, but really looking forward to it. So stay tuned, it's gonna be great. We're gonna have things going in here, and when you actually put up the sheetrock, you really define rooms and take shape and doing all that. So the next couple weeks, we're hoping to start hanging sheetrock, so stay tuned.